All right, here at Sports Spectrum at the Super Bowl, we get to talk to an NFL MVP, 2005 NFL MVP, Seattle Seahawks Ring of Honor inductee in 2022, Shaun Alexander. Hey, buddy.
Man, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, buddy?
Yeah. You know what? I'm good. My wife and I, we had baby number 13 last July.
13.
So 10 girls, 3 boys.
Jeez.
God's good.
We were talking about this last night at the Huddle for Hope thing that we were at. And everybody just went, when they heard that you had 13 kids and 10 girls. Nine, obviously, one is in heaven.
That's right.
Yes.
Little Tora is in heaven already. She was 70 days old when she passed. And we still get to explain how valuable life is and how each
what a testimony.
one of them is so important to us and how we can love and cherish each moment because you never know.
Yeah.
So Tora, as hard and painful as it is, it's always a great teaching moment to value today.
Yeah.
And thank God for every moment that you have with every person.
That felt like that last night at the Huddle for Hope. For people who don't know, Huddle for Hope has been going around. This is the third year.
Yeah.
I went to the Los Angeles one, the first one. I was at Phoenix last year, and then last night, as we were recording this, we were at the one here in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, it's gotten bigger every year.
Yep.
There was probably a couple hundred, maybe more people, 300 people last night. It was a lot of people.
They said like around 500.
500, even better. I had no idea, just kind of gauging on the number. People were getting baptized. People were coming up to the stage to give their lives to Christ.
There was 21 baptisms.
21 baptisms.
It was wild, right?
We saw one, and then we were like, that's amazing, just one. And 21 baptisms.
21.
I just want to ask you, when you think about platform, you and I spoke about this a couple times when we've done conversations like this, but how wonderful is it to see that, hey, okay, I played football, that's great.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to come and hear us talk about football, wonderful. Mm-hmm. But then they raise their hand, they come forward, they get baptized, amazing.
There's an eternal impact that we could never fully even understand, because there was husband and wives that were like, man, we believe we were saved when we were first there. We want to be baptized. We want to rededicate. We'd never done those things before, but we know we want to You're like, what? Their kids' lives are going to be changed forever.
Yeah.
And so, you have moments like that where you're like, man, there's something bigger than this little game in Las Vegas that's happening, and we're so thankful to be a part of it.
Yeah, you were a part of a panel with a couple other NFL players. You were the Elder Statesman.
Yeah.
Does it feel weird to be the Elder Statesman at this point?
Always does.
Yeah.
Always does, because, I remember when I was playing in this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
And I remember being drafted. I mean, I was telling, I'll share this story a couple of times, but I'm going to share it with you first.
Yeah.
I'm always like, secular music. What do I think about that? You know what I mean? And I'm raised where you listen to anything, but stuff is too much. And then so I just really was kind of, the more older I got in the Lord, the more I just didn't make it a big deal. Like I don't know. So
yeah.
But in the middle of me being my second year in the league, I'd met Usher. Great singer, dancer.
He's doing a Super Bowl halftime this year.
Show.
Yeah.
And I had met my second year at this MTV thing, this actor named Chris. And so we shake hands and we're like, oh yeah, doing the thing. And I leave and I go do all my stuff. And then a couple years later, Usher has a new song out. Yeah. And so and they're singing. And Little John, he's big, raspy voice, okay. And he says, Luda. And I was not paying attention, but I turned around. And I was like, oh, Usher's got a new song. And it was Chris Johnson. And I was like, oh, that's ludicrous. So I knew him when he was just an actor at one of our Super Bowl things. And I'm over here laughing like, oh, man. So every time I see him, I'm like, we start off together. He goes, right?
Yeah. I knew you before you were.
Yeah. It's always funny to come in, meet people at a young age, see them climb ladders, talking about being an older statesman, and know that, well, man, I could still go plant seeds anytime because I know what you had to do to go get to where you are, and there's some hard work. There's probably some things that you feel shameful about, but you're still loved because I remember what you was beforehand, and isn't that how Jesus does all of us?
Always.
He knows us exactly before any of the mess, and he's not going to call us by the mess that we could have been in or might not have been in.
Yeah.
But the mess we could have been in. He's going to be like, nah, I remember you. I know who you really are. You were nervous to get on the TV show and talk about you were acting, or you know what I mean? Like you're still that guy. Like let's go from here.
Let's go back. I think for so many of us as followers of Christ, we want to go back to those moments when we were just starting, and maybe, especially in our faith walk I'm talking about, and not thinking we have it all figured out, which is always a dangerous place to be anyways. But that moment, like I think about being 27 in the back bedroom of my brother's house, and he says, let me tell you about Jesus. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm open. And it's a starting point. And there's an innocence about that
totally.
time.
Like it was okay to be foolish. But with faith, walk out towards Jesus with all you got.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you get to an age and you're like, it's not okay for me to just by faith walk it out. And that's the lie.
Yeah.
I mean,
you were talking about that last night.
It's the greatest deceiver that he created.
Yeah. Satan.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about obedience, because that was a word after I started my walk with Christ. About 2 years later, I remember seeing a pastor, my brother's pastor, Pastor Jerome, I'll never forget it. And he said, Jason, if you just get one word in your Christian walk that will transform your life forever, one word, you want to take a guess what it was? And I couldn't guess. He goes, it's obedience.
Obedience, huh?
And you were talking about that last night.
Yeah, it's really wild. You know, my first prayer, I'm always gentle when I tell my faith story, because we were not raised in a very religious house. My mom was a prayer warrior. We went to church, but we were very unreligious. In other words, cell phones weren't there yet. If an auntie would have called and said, hey, it's Sunday, instead of going to church, we think about having a picnic at the park, my mom would be like, let's go to the picnic. I'm like, well, what about church? We are the church. So I was taught that not in your life is stuck in this building, but you are. So now it had to be with me everywhere I went. And so when I was 10 years old and I gave my life to the Lord, I'm always slow with that, because some people are like, oh yeah, I was going to church and and they live like heathens through high school and through college, and I don't want to judge that, but I'm like, you live like a heathen, you know what I mean? And though not perfect, there was an excellence with the Lord that I always tried to walk with. And so when I was 10, my first prayer was, God, I don't know much, but I do know how to be obedient.
Yeah.
So if you show me how to do it, or you tell me what to do, I'm just going to do it. Best of my ability, I'm going to be all in about you. And so that was the beginning of my journey. And so dreams and visions, God, are you telling me to go here, seeing things and knowing, oh, this person walked in, oh, I saw them in a dream. Let me go I'm gonna glue to you. What college I'm going to, how to go play, the wife that I'm going to have. Those are all God's nudgings, you know what I mean? Yeah, he's nudging me toward, I don't know much, God. I do know how to be obedient. So then, of course, I went to Alabama, the greatest university of all time, and
Roll Tide.
and they and some guys there taught me how to study the Bible. And so I was literally hey, I just know how to be obedient. I can study and I'll learn, and some things I'd be like, hey, this doesn't make sense, and the guys would walk me through it. But the whole goal was, God, I'm gonna give you all I got, and I know it's gonna be good enough.
Yeah.
I know by faith, I know what I've got is gonna be good enough. And then I started realizing we are all fearfully and wonderfully made, designed to be what God wants us to do for His will to be done, not comparing to each other so that one of us can do better at being one of each other, right? And that's
well said.
The liar is good at that.
What do you think is the responsibility for the current NFL player, or even just current athlete, who might say that they believe in God, they trust in Jesus, they might even call themselves Christian? Maybe sometimes when you watch the behind-the-scenes film or, documentaries, maybe they're not always reflecting that, maybe with language or how they're, acting or whatever. What's the responsibility to remain obedient and to be an ambassador for Christ for the Christian athlete in today's world?
Well, I think that there's been a great watering down, a great lie for today's believer, that you don't have to be a disciple of Jesus making disciples of Jesus. There's the great lie.
Great lie, yes.
So now, all of a sudden, now I just have some rules to follow. Well, my will might be able to do that, and then anytime I don't feel like it, I can go cover it up. But when do you get to take off being a disciple and making disciples? There's no one I can be around without trying to plant seeds. There's no one I can be around without saying, oh, man, you've been around me long enough. Come sit down. I'm going to show you what we're doing wrong. So now here you have the current NFL players. How many of them are really being discipled?
Yeah.
It's not a lot.
No.
So how can we, we wouldn't go tell a fifth grader to go do calculus.
Right.
But now we tell these NFL players, hey, now you're making money. You need to actually have some character and integrity and faith. They're like, what do you mean? I only have the faith to throw a ball, to catch a ball or tackle somebody. Yeah. Well, no, in actuality, if you walked up to kids like, who's discipling you right now? They would have to look you in the eye and wrestle with that. And that's a good wrestle to have, because at the end of the day, the disciples should be a vessel that God is pouring through them to get to you. And then we should all do like Jesus. I no longer call you servant, I now call you friend. You know? And so if everybody's discipling correctly, they're going to disciple a bunch of people that become great friends of theirs.
That's good stuff here with Shaun Alexander, former NFL MVP, Ring of Honor with the Seahawks in 2022, and played in the Super Bowl many years ago. I want to ask you about what you're actually here for, to promote.
Yeah.
We're promoting Jesus, of course. But,
the King.
The King of Kings, that's right. But Stand Together Foundation, Cafe Momentum, tell us about that.
Man, I've been with Stand Together Foundation for about 5 years now, and super excited about what we're doing with Cafe Momentum. Stand Together is about 800 of some of the most successful businessmen, women, and philanthropic leaders in the country, tackling the country's biggest issues. One of them is, criminal justice reform, especially with the youth. So I jumped in with Cafe Momentum, and Cafe Momentum is it's so cool watching Chad Hauser, the chef that left his restaurant and started Cafe Momentum, bringing kids in for a year internship, paid internship, and these kids are walking through the 4 stages of the restaurant, but also teaching them about things of life and what I call the secret sauce. He started adding the things that they needed, the aunties and uncles, psychologists, social workers, tutors, food and wealth managers, wealth trainers. Like these kids are now all having people come into their lives that really love them and want to see them succeed. And we're seeing recidivism change. Like it's 45 to 50% almost in every city.
Incredible.
That will go back to prison. Cafe Momentum, 11%.
Wow.
And so I said, well, man, let's put one in every NFL city. And so we started in Dallas. We now have one in Pittsburgh. We have one in Nashville. The Broncos just jumped in, so we'll have one in Denver this year. Falcons, so we'll have one in Atlanta. Houston, Miami, and Tampa are just about ready for theirs. LA's getting themselves together. We'll go from 1 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, man. It just happened just like that. And we're just super excited because at the end of the day, like they were calling these kids throwaways. And now we get to actually say, no. You're something that's going to be a great influence to your family, your city, your state, this country.
It's powerful, especially you and I both being dads of kids. I mean, we wouldn't want our kids to ever hear that throwaway.
It's amazing, right?
So why would we ever just assume that they want, no, let's do something about it.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, it's like, man, who would want to be judged for the rest of their lives for something they did at 14 or 16? I don't even want to tell people what I did at 14 and 16.
Oh, if they only knew my thoughts, my actions,
just a hot
it was
mess.
Not good.
You know what I mean? And then, but you have these kids and some of their stories, I just saw one of the ambassadors. Those are the kids that are walking around here for Cafe Momentum. I brought a bunch of them down here for the Super Bowl.
Nice.
And, 14 years old, steals a computer out of a store. Says, I wasn't going to steal it. I was going to take the computer back, and then they were going to give me the money, and I was going to give the money to Mom. Why are you doing this? He's like, well, I overheard Mom talking about the electric bill might go on, and I know Grandma's machine is connected to the electric bill, so I was trying to save her life.
So the intention is good. Obviously, the deed isn't good, but the intention is there.
And we said, dude, you have a great heart.
Right.
Like, let's just go figure out how to go do that. So we connected with some people, and they gave him a job because, you can't work at 14, but they were allowed that to happen. He got to take some homeschool classes, do a Cafe Momentum kind of thing. And next thing you know, he's now 4 years later, he's a full-time chef in one of the best restaurants. And like we're looking at his life, and he's making good money, and he's watching his family grow, and he's asking good 18-year-old boy questions that you want somebody of maturity to answer for him.
Yeah.
It's just a totally turnaround. It's just awesome.
I love that. CafeMomentum.org/Super Bowl is the website. He is the Super Bowl MVP. I should say the NFL MVP in 2005. Wished he was a Super Bowl MVP.
Do I?
Oh, I know, but it's okay.
When I get on your show, it reminds me that I don't have to have the trophy or the Hall of Fame gold jacket. When I'm around everyone else, they always bring it up, and I'm like, oh, it's such a wrestle. Like I so want the crowns of glory that
you got the King of Kings in your life, man. That's good enough.
And so it grounds me back to be like, man, we're talking about the most important thing, and I get to always share that with my kids, and I think God's plan is so perfect because He knows that I'm a team player, and so if I had the gold jacket, then maybe I would lean more with that team a little bit. But he's like, nah, you stay in your pocket. You know what I mean? Like, when it's time for you to make that speech for the whole world, I just already know. He's like, we're going to have to have an altar call. You know what I mean? The whole world will hear the gospel. And so how
Yes, sir.
good that's going to be.
Shaun Alexander, thank you, my friend. Great to see you.
Yeah, brother. It's good, man.